This domineering female president of a listed company unexpectedly encountered a huge tornado after just once playing paragliding. After waking up, she realized that she had already fallen into the territory of the Northern Dynasty, facing the pursuers behind her. And then I desperately wanted to run back to her own country. Just as she was about to climb over the fence, the soldier behind her raised his gun at her, and then I was so scared that she jumped down. Fortunately, she was not hit. In the process of running, she tripped and fell accidentally, in order to survive. And then I had to continue moving forward despite her injuries. She was afraid of getting lost, so she marked the way along the way. Meanwhile, the soldiers from the neighboring country were still pursuing her night and day. Ji Hao, the team leader, discovered the marks in the trees. He immediately knew where NNI had gone. At this time, NNI arrived at a village. Exhausted, this immediately gave her hope. Just as she stepped into the village, the scene in front of her almost made her collapse. It turned out to be a village in the Northern Dynasty. At this time, a military vehicle drove towards NNI. The dazzling lights made it impossible for her to open her eyes. Suddenly, a figure appeared and pulled her away. If the villain Jiu in the car found out, NNI would definitely be executed. Fortunately, she was rescued by Ji Hao, who arrived in time. The moment NNI saw him, she started to act cute and adorable. She knew that no matter how strong the other person pretended to be, he was just a man. At this time, Ji Hao was still torn between whether to execute NNI according to the law. In the end, he took her home because she was his future wife. Early the next morning, Ji Hao made a bowl of handmade noodles for NNI. NNI saw the noodles and deliberately played smart, even asking the other person to taste it first, but was immediately exposed by Ji Hao. It turned out that NNI was afraid that the food had been poisoned. Ji Hao was still puzzled by her identity. He always suspected that NNI was a spy sent by another country, so NNI had to reveal her identity to her. She said she was the daughter of a chaebol and the owner of a listed fashion company. As long as you can safely return me to South Korea, I will let you enjoy the glory and wealth for the rest of your life. But Ji Hao was not interested. Just then, Ji Hao's subordinate Zihe excitedly reported to him that the Korean woman from last night was dead, but the result turned him around and scared him on the spot. And then I immediately recognized that the one who shot at him was Zihe. Zihe couldn't help but marvel that this spy would be planted in the captain's home, and he asked the captain to give him some time. He would find a place surrounded by mountains and water. This woman was buried alive, but NNI was not afraid of this, because as long as it was known that she was here, everyone would have to die, and even the captain would have to be punished with forced labor and ideological education. Just as Ji Hao was at a loss for what to do, he didn't expect the members of the small team to have come here, and they were all extremely surprised to see that NNI was still alive. NNI then asked them to take her back to where they originally landed. She would find a way to escape. Zihe, who was in a daze, said that if they climbed over the barbed wire, they would be electrocuted. It turned out that the tornado caused a power failure yesterday. That's why the high voltage power lines were not activated, which saved NNI's life. But now that it has been fixed, this method will no longer work. In the end, everyone unanimously decided to let NNI sneak back to China by sea, but they can't do anything until 3 days later. During this time, NNI made a request. She wanted to have meat for 2 of her 3 meals. Zihe laughed at her. He couldn't believe that South Korea was so rich that they could eat meat twice a day. But Ji Hao still took the preserved meat from the jar that could only be eaten during the new year. This made the rich girl NNI feel very novel. What made her even more surprised was that the people here didn't have refrigerators. NNI, who had never seen the world, was surprised again. What's more incredible is that when taking a bath, they have to cover the bathtub with a plastic sheet so that the heat doesn't escape. NNI, who has never experienced this way of bathing, exclaimed, "That's amazing." And when she came out of the bath, the room suddenly went dark. She hurriedly picked up the phone to contact Ji Hao, but there was no answer. Just as NNI didn't know what to do, she saw a flash of light outside the window. It scared her. Then she heard the sound of the door opening. This scared her even more. NNI hurriedly pulled the curtains closed and then held the flower pot high while waiting for the thief to break in. Just as she smashed it at the intruder, she realized that it was Ji Hao. It turned out that Ji Hao had run out to buy a candle. It was because NNI had said that she needed a candle when she was taking a bath and when she was sleeping. But the candle he bought was just an ordinary one. What NNI wanted was an aromatherapy candle. As a rich girl, she had never been so scared before. She immediately burst into tears. Ji Hao, who was standing next to her, didn't know how to comfort her. Then NNI thought about how her disappearance had caused the company's stock price to plummet. Compared to the loss of 3 billion won, the current situation made her feel even more absurd and sad. She even burst into tears in front of a stranger. It was really unbecoming. At this time, Ji Hao wisely extinguished the candles. Then he got up and went to Pyongyang on a mission. Before leaving, he bought NNI a large bag of daily necessities. When NNI opened it, she found that there was actually a bottle of essential oil produced by her company. It turned out that Ji Hao had gone to the market to buy it for her. When the shop owner introduced him to the lingerie she wanted, Ji Hao embarrassedly said he would take it all. When NNI saw the size of the lingerie, she burst out laughing. On the other side, Jihao was forcibly taken away by the security personnel as soon as he got off the train. He came this time to investigate the theft of cultural relics. Jihao suspected that this case was related to Xiaoyu. Unexpectedly, he was bitten back by the other party. He was actually charged with a crime. Xiaoyu was about to do something to Jihao when suddenly an officer barged in and kicked the deputy chief. He also told him that his life was over, as he was the only son of the chief of the general political department. The deputy chief was so scared that he almost dropped his jaw. Jihao wanted to protect NNI's safety, so he specially arranged for his subordinates to dig a waterway near his house just to cover it up. When NNI learned that this was Jihao's arrangement, she was moved, and when they returned at night, they ran into the villain Xiaoyu and had to lie about digging a waterway to get past the interrogation. The resourceful Zifan asked where the officer was going. Xiaoyu claimed that there had been a lot of defectors recently, and that he was now going to all the officers' homes for surprise inspections. This scared Minja so much that he started hiccuping. Xiaoyu immediately sensed something was wrong, and then they told Jihao about it. After thinking for a moment, he turned around and walked to the officer. At this time, NNI suddenly heard a knock on the door and felt panicked. Then a group of people broke in and came into the house to search around. A glass of warm water made Xiaoyu conclude that there must be someone in the house. Just as they returned empty-handed, Xiaoyu saw a cellar not far away. The moment the cellar was opened shocked everyone. It turned out that NNI was hiding inside. Just then, a car drove up in the distance. Jihao got out of the car and hurried over. Xiaoyu immediately pointed his gun at NNI. Facing such a threat, Jihao, who has always been upright, had to tell a lie. He questioned the crowd why they wanted to treat his fiancée like this. Everyone present was surprised, and NNI was also stunned. Xiaoyu had to put down his pistol after hearing this, but he did not let go. He also told NNI to take out her ID and special pass for the frontline area. The situation once again became tense. Jihao had no choice but to tell her that his fiancée was from South Korea, and that she was a secret agent under the 11th Division. This was top secret information managed by his superiors, and so he couldn't reveal too much detail. He also claimed that his fiancée had just returned to China and that she was very tired, and NNI saw this as a good opportunity to cooperate. This move convinced everyone even more. When the two of them went out into the courtyard, Jihao told her to stop pretending. There was no one else here, and NNI hurriedly explained that she had improvised and gotten too involved. Jihao had no choice but to come up with this plan. NNI was now considered a spy, and a spy who betrayed her own country at that. This was outrageous. What if they found out? Jihao told her not to worry. She would be leaving the next night anyway, and she just had to get through the day quietly. As soon as she finished speaking, she heard a knock on the door. It turned out to be a group of village women who had come to bring Jihao some food. They wanted to take the opportunity to find out about NNI's situation. Unexpectedly, NNI quietly poked her head out, which scared the three women back repeatedly. Facing the question of whether she was Jihao's fiancée, NNI shyly nodded repeatedly. But when asked where she was on duty, NNI immediately said seriously that this was confidential and must not be disclosed casually. Then she gave the group of women a charming smile and closed the door to refuse their visit. Just as NNI excitedly said that they were not as beautiful, she heard someone outside mocking her. Look at her messy hair. If you didn't know any better, you'd think she was a ghost. NNI was so angry she could burst. The next morning, a group of people from the village gathered around a luxury car. They had never seen such a car before. NNI hid behind the door and listened. Jihao also came quietly to her side. Unexpectedly, she was shocked by Jihao. She was curious why everyone was gathered around a broken car, and NNI even offered to walk Jihao to the door to show off her beauty. It turned out that she had been bothered by what she heard last night. At this time, Jihao took out a cloth towel and tied her head directly. It turned out that in the northern dynasties, only foreigners and crazy women would go out with their hair loose. As soon as the two of them walked out the door, NNI pretended to show off her affection in front of the villagers. She also deliberately patted the dust off Jihao's clothes and asked Jihao to gently stroke her hair. Jihao saw the distant gaze and had to do as he was told. This move left everyone dumbfounded, and NNI felt that this was not enough, so she continued to flirt with Jihao. This made a group of people almost unable to look directly at them. Seeing NNI's expression like this, Jihao was also scared and uncomfortable. He hurriedly wanted to get into the car and leave, and NNI waved goodbye to him. This show of affection made her earn face in front of the villagers. After Jihao left, he arranged for his subordinates to pretend to dig a waterway at home. At this time, a young boy stole a military uniform that was being dried. They hurriedly ran out to catch up. After the young boy was caught, he cried and said that his younger sister had not eaten for 3 days. After NNI learned this, she took a lot of food from home and gave it to the young boy. Jihao, who had returned, did not say anything. Instead, he told the young boy to wash his hands quickly so that he would not get sick. At this moment, NNI was also moved by his kindness. Subsequently, NNI deliberately held an awards meeting before leaving. The first prize for being kind to others was awarded to Jinho. The prizes were divided into 2 types, a unified version and an immediate pickup version. However, He chose the immediate pickup version of a bucket of corn, and did not choose the unified version of 100 million won. The second prize, which was for those who love Korean culture, went to Minja, because he loves watching Korean dramas and did not hesitate to choose the unified prize. For this reason, an NI will arrange for him to have lunch with the star of the TV series. The Human Baby Prize was awarded to Zfan because he is the handsomest one. This made Jihao immediately unhappy. Zfan didn't choose to give him a Korean female model, but instead asked for a hug before parting ways. And Zhee, who often teases an NI, only got shampoo and shower gel. When he heard that the awards ceremony was over, Jihao froze for a moment. Why didn't he get his own prize? He turned around angrily and was about to leave. Then NNI pulled him into the courtyard and pointed to the tomato seedlings, telling him that this was a special appreciation award. Jihao didn't care about it. That night, Jihao took an NI out secretly and drove to the port as fast as he could. Jihao exchanged 2 phone cards for the boarding pass for the 2 of them. He didn't trust an NI to accompany him and left together. However, an accident happened on the way. The small boat they were riding in was discovered by the Coast Guard. The captain quickly told them to hide under the cabin. The bribe offered by the captain using the phone card didn't move the police officer. The 2 people hiding under the cabin were extremely anxious. At this moment, Jihao suddenly remembered what Minja had told him about a way to resolve crises in Korean dramas. When the cabin door was opened, Jihao went straight in for the kiss, which scared the police officer who was doing the inspection. Jihao saw that this trick really worked. Before he could catch his breath, the cabin door was opened again, and he followed suit. This really took the captain by surprise. Even if you offer flowers to the motherland, you can't do it here. The police officer told them to come up quickly. It seems that this trick still doesn't work. After arriving on the ship, the captain continued to defend himself, because the 2 young people had come out to fish, so he had set sail. However, the police officer said that what he had witnessed was not fishing. As soon as the captain heard this, he became interested. If they said they were fishing and they really did fish, then when would the great seedlings that lead our country sprout? And then I saw this and immediately said that we were going to get married soon. So everything was in a hurry. Jihao, who was standing next to her, was at a loss. Although they averted the crisis, they missed the cargo ship docking ahead. An-NI was so close to returning to South Korea that she felt particularly disappointed. However, once back on shore, she optimistically adjusted her mentality. She wanted Jihao to offer her some comfort. But the big straight man wouldn't coax her, which made an NI even more angry. Jihao also wanted to distance himself from her. The kiss just now was not a kiss, but just a peck. This level of intimacy is only considered a greeting abroad. But after all, this is not abroad. At least you have to show your attitude to yourself. If Jihao feels guilty, then promise yourself that you can go back to South Korea next week for a cup of espresso. Jihao just replied that it was impossible and turned around to leave. This made an NI even more angry. So the next day, as soon as it got light, she left a note and disappeared. It turned out that she wanted to go back to China by paragliding, and she was prepared for any emergencies. Just then, Jihao arrived in time to stop her from doing something stupid. An NI came because of a natural disaster. But the situation is different now. Once she is discovered, she will be shot on sight. Jihao suddenly heard a voice coming from the walkie-talkie. He quickly turned it off. However, the military had already intercepted the radio waves. Yu was leading his men to the area. Jihao was also aware of this. They would be there in 10 minutes. He looked around and checked the terrain of the cliff. Seeing that the military was about to arrive, he grabbed an NI and ran towards the edge of the cliff. Then he hugged an NI and jumped off the cliff. In this way, the 2 of them successfully avoided the siege. Yu learned from the eavesdropper Yu that they had returned together early that morning. This made him feel that something was wrong. In order to reward Yu for his work, he specially gave him some money and asked him to supplement his son's nutrition. Just as Yu took out his wallet to buy pork, unexpectedly, it was snatched by a thief. This scene was just seen by Jihao. He hurriedly chased after him and finally arrived in a courtyard. It turned out that this group of people were all veterans. The leader of the group told him to leave quickly, but Jihao was prepared to fight to the death. Even if they were armed, Jihao was their match. In no time at all, Jihao had knocked them all out. At that moment, one of the guys tried to sneak up on Jihao from behind, but he was knocked out by a brick thrown by Yu, who had arrived. Yu, who had successfully obtained the wallet, thanked Jihao. This wallet was very important to him, especially the note inside. Yu would suffer every time he saw it. Since an NI came here, she has completely changed. Before, she never ate breakfast. Even if she did, she only ate organic yam. Now, an NI is eating the burnt rice in the pot with sugar, relishing every bite. Zhee, who is full of energy, starts mocking her again. She is about to finish eating all the food in the captain's house. If this continues, she really will settle down here. And NI also asks the others to help her think of a solution. Jihao alone is not going to work. At this time, Minja said that although the captain is away, we still have to protect you. When Shirley heard that Jihao cared about his safety, he immediately covered up his smile and said, "Could something happen to her here alone? Then NNI began to complain again that Jihao's small official position was the reason she couldn't leave here. The next day was the birthday of the officer's wife. The women in the village all sent birthday gifts to curry favor with her. However, NNI sneaked in empty-handed. Her purpose of this trip was to curry favor with Sanzu, so that Jihao can be promoted. Sanzu, overjoyed, asked NNI to sit here. NNI, however, said she would not sit next to someone too pretty. Sanzu was immediately overwhelmed with joy. Then she chose to sit next to the ugliest woman. Sanzu praised her for being so principled. This remark instantly enlivened the atmosphere. Then everyone presented their gifts. NNI, who hadn't received a gift, took Haoyu's wife's dress. The other woman had been afraid to give it as a gift because she thought it was shabby. But NNI thought the dress was in line with this year's fashion trends. After she made a few changes, a beautiful dress was revealed to everyone. NNI said that her natural sense of beauty was the core of beauty. The draped collar fluttered dramatically, making people feel as if they had met a Greek goddess. The praise made Sanzu change her attitude towards NNI. Before they parted for the night, NNI reminded Sanzu to say nice things to the officer, in order to get closer to him. She even called him sister. This made Sanzu feel much younger and he couldn't stop smiling. Jihao, on the other hand, kept walking back and forth at the intersection in order to meet NNI by chance. His hard work paid off and he finally met NNI. Facing NNI's questioning, Jihao pretended to have just happened to be here. NNI told him to thank himself. Jihao thought NNI must have misunderstood him. He is not powerless. NNI interrupted him before he could finish. NNI bluntly said his bike is very special. Then the two rode their bikes home. This scene is simply too happy. When the two returned home, they found that the team members had not yet left. They had prepared a lot of grilled seafood. Zihi threw a flame on it and instantly a big fire broke out. This startled NNI. She was stunned by this cooking method. Minja, who was standing next to her, picked up one and let her taste it. NNI said that she didn't really like anything except fish soup, but Ta took it and tasted it anyway. It tasted pretty good. Then Minja poured in some soju. NNI put on her rich girl act again and said that she only drank white wine with seafood. But after Minja persuaded her, she had to drink it. NNI couldn't stop now and even grabbed someone else's wine and drank it. Now she has adapted to this lifestyle and atmosphere. Only the silent Jihao would secretly glance at NNI a few times. Early the next morning, Jihao was busy brewing coffee and then grinding it into powder, and carefully making a cup of coffee for NNI. NNI never thought she could still drink coffee here. Just as Jihao was leaving, she actually chased after him. To thank him, NNI even made a heart sign at him. Jihao, who didn't understand, asked Minja the meaning of the sign. Zihi immediately said that the other person wanted to defeat you with 2 fingers. Minja hurriedly explained that it meant a heart. A heart is the heart. She wants to give you her heart. Zihi was very confused as to why someone would want to give their heart to someone else. Minja hinted to Jihao that this meant she liked you. Jihao was shocked when he heard this, since NNI and Sanzu became friends. The two of them have been hanging out together. But in the evening, NNI got lost. Jihao, who had heard the news, hurried to find her. Just as NNI felt sad and desperate, she accidentally saw a light in the distance. It turned out that Jihao was holding up an aromatherapy candle to light the way for her. NNI slowly moved closer, her eyes already brimming with tears. In an instant, she felt that the man in front of her was so safe and secure. On the way back, Jihao sensed that NNI seemed to have a good impression of him. Coupled with the heart-shaped gesture, Jihao, a straight guy, confessed everything to NNI. It turned out that he had a fiancée from a family alliance. NNI was unhappy as soon as she heard. She didn't think Jihao would be such a man. If it was reported by others, they would all suffer. Jihao hurriedly explained that there would be no mistakes, because his fiancée was studying abroad and would not be here for a short time. However, the next second Jihao was slapped in the face. At that moment, his fiancée was standing in front of his door. At this moment, NNI also walked over. She looked at the woman in front of her, then turned to look at the silent Jihao. Ma Li seemed to understand something when she saw NNI. She hurriedly claimed that she had come to pick up her uncle's car, and asked Jihao to hand over the car keys. She would take her leave for the day. Jihao also explained to her that the person beside him was a comrade with whom he had implemented a combat plan. Ma Li asked, "If you achieve your goal, will you continue to associate with each other?" Hearing Jihao's firm reply, NNI looked at him disappointedly. This scene was also seen by Ma Li. At this time, NNI told her not to misunderstand the two. They were indeed strategic allies. Then NNI wanted to leave in a hurry, but Jihao grabbed her by the hand and told her not to run around. Go inside, lock the door and stay at home. Ma Li saw NNI walk into Jihao's house. On the way back, she was unhappy the whole time. After getting out of the car, they were forcibly pulled into the elevator by Ma Li's uncle. Her uncle said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, and that Jihao must be very happy to see her off. He also told her to treasure such a sincere man, because if it were any other man, he would have found another woman after 7 years. A bit of a scumbag would even bring the woman home. Ma Li's head was spinning. Jihao also looked guilty. Ma Li's mother really liked this future son-in-law. The family then had dinner together. Her mother kept pushing for the two to get married. Jihao was distracted, looking at the time, while NNI at home pretended to read a book, and every time there was a noise, she hurriedly ran outside, thinking it was Jihao coming home. She was disappointed every time. Then NNI pretended to be coy and picked up her book, which really wasn't her style, but when she heard a noise again, she hurriedly ran outside again. NNI, full of joy, opened the door but saw the faces of the ants. It turned out that the ants had learned of NNI's ordeal, and they all wanted to get drunk with her tonight. Sanzu spoke up at this time. Even if Jihao has a fiancé and is engaged, we still have to turn him gay. Don't be afraid. Everyone, just break his neck. And NNI was terrified when she heard this. The matrons said that not only would they break his neck, they would also dismember his body into a million pieces. They all agreed that they would do their best to change his bad habits. And NNI hurriedly explained to everyone that this was a strategic marriage arranged by their parents. After her heartfelt explanation, the ants fully understood NNI's current predicament, and they no longer wanted to get rid of Jihao. The next day when Jihao returned, NNI used the reason that he had spent the night away to deliberately draw a line with an empty can and told Jihao not to cross it, so that the two of them would not go to war. Jihao saw that she was angry, so he had to say that he had gone out last night on business, and that he wanted NNI to participate in the international track and field competition. That way, they could fly to Europe. And NNI was immediately happy to hear this, and said that she had good athletic instincts and could run really fast. But Jihao only told her to be a substitute runner. She would not actually participate in the competition, because she could fly back to China once she arrived at the competition site. And their conversation was overheard by the eavesdropper Hao Yu, who then told Jiyu about NNI's itinerary. And NNI had to get a local hairstyle in order to apply for a passport, and she had planned to buy a nice dress but was looked down upon by her boss. This was the first time in her life she had suffered from being penniless, so NNI went to the pawn shop and took out the limited edition watch on her hand. The boss said that the weight of this watch was too light, and NNI kept praising him for knowing what was good. The boss gave 20,000 won based on the material on the watch, and NNI was about to explode with anger after hearing this. At this time, there was a pawned belt. Unexpectedly, a belt would be worth more than a watch. It turned out that this pawnshop calculated based on weight and didn't care if it was a limited edition. On the other side, Jiyu was trying to find out NNI's identity, and had the squadron members imprisoned for interrogation. Facing Jiyu's threats, Jinho did not choose to give in but was beaten up by the other party. At this time, Jihao hurried over and took his subordinates away. The four of them were beaten up like this, and NNI felt deeply remorseful. To express her gratitude, NNI said she would give them something, and she stretched out her hand, making a heart sign in front of each of them. Jihao was speechless when he saw this. How could this heart be so worthless and be used so casually? The next day, NNI was on the train when she saw a group of people outside the window and was very curious. Jihao told her that these people were all businessmen. They traded with the passengers on the train during the train stops. That night, bonfires were lit near the train. Because the temperature inside and outside the train was the same, they could light fires to keep warm outside. As the daughter of a chaebol, this was the first time NNI had sat in a haystack. The next second she saw how people had quilts. Jihao looked in that direction and immediately understood what she meant. Turning around, NNI saw people eating corn and potatoes. Jihao could only helplessly get up and buy corn. NNI instantly had an idea. She felt that in the future he would be a good husband. Perhaps it was at this time that NNI fell completely in love with Jihao. That night, Jihao draped his military uniform over NNI's body and let her head rest on his shoulder. Jihao stayed in the same position until dawn so as not to disturb her rest. The next day, the two arrived at their destination, and NNI then went to a photo studio to take a picture on purpose. On the other side, Chun Jun, who had been romantically involved with NNI, also arrived here. He had cheated NNI's brother out of a lot of money and came here to escape the pursuit. But here he unexpectedly met NNI. Just as NNI was surprised, she was forcibly pulled away by Chenjun. Just as the elevator door was about to close, Jihao arrived in time and saw the two holding hands. He took a step forward and subdued the other party. Chenjun suddenly screamed in pain and questioned NNI who this man was. NNI lied that he was her bodyguard. Then she scolded Jihao in front of her face to let go quickly. At this time, Chenjun did not know that Jihao was NNI's boyfriend, and asked her to meet at the lobby coffee shop at 3 p.m. Chenjun really thought Jihao was his bodyguard and even forced a tip on him before leaving. Jihao really didn't like being called a bodyguard, but the next second he was slapped in the face by reality. Jihao protected NNI at every turn, and this was evident to NNI. He told her that this was the job of a bodyguard. It was almost time for the appointment, but Chenjun was being chased. It eventually led him to the rooftop. The purpose of NNI's brother sending the killer was to take the money he had been cheated of. Chenjun, in order to survive, even told the news that NNI was still alive. And Chenjun also made a condition: if you want to know where NNI is, then let him pay less. At this time, and NNI is still waiting for Chenjun to come. Jihao then began to interrogate NNI about his relationship with him, and NNI then explained to Jihao that he was born into a wealthy family, and that his two older brothers deliberately let him marry Chenjun so that she would not compete for the family fortune. But the clever NNI did not do that. This scene of the two getting along was just seen by Molly's best friend. After learning the news, Molly's hair did not do straight to Jihao. Jihao came to the hotel room and started searching. In the hidden places in the room, he found a lot of listening devices, which shocked an NI. After the inspection, Jihao just wanted to leave when he was stopped by an NI. She was still worried about whether the plan to return to the country would go smoothly. Jihao told her to keep a low profile, but an NI suddenly thought of Chenjun. Since he came here, he will definitely leave. If he can go back to China with her, that would be the best plan. Jihao said. Why would you trust him? An NI said. Maybe it's not just ordinary fate that we met here. Jihao thought. How could there be such a simple fate? Just as he was about to leave the room, he ran into Ma Li, who was waiting outside the door. At that moment, Ma Li saw an NI come out of the same room, and the situation suddenly became awkward. In order not to give her the wrong idea, an NI hurriedly explained that she and Jihao lived in different rooms. The aloof Ma Li was not interested. After returning to Jihao's room, Ma Li said that it's 7 o'clock tonight. The two parents hoped that he would be punctual for the appointment. That night, after meeting with each other, the parents reached an agreement to marry the two. They planned to hold the wedding on the last Saturday of next month. Jihao did not object to this either, and while Ma Li was in the bathroom, she unexpectedly met an NI. In order to discourage him, Ma Li told him about her marriage to Jihao. An NI was shocked to hear this. After recovering, she had to give her blessings to the other party. An NI also said that she might not be able to attend the wedding. Ma Li told her not to worry. Disappearing from here is the best wedding gift. An NI saw her domineeringly leave and couldn't help but exclaim, "This woman is ruthless." The calculating Chenjun secretly turned on his phone when he met an NI. He just wanted to prove to an NI's brother that an NI was still alive. So he asked Chenjun to do everything he could to stop an NI from returning to China. Later, Chenjun found Jiayu and showed him a photo of an NI. Jiayu immediately recognized her as Jihao's fiancée, and also began to doubt an NI's identity. Chenjun was willing to pay him to stop an NI from returning to China, which was a win-win situation for Jiayu. Not only did it solve his worries, but he also got paid. He told Hao Yu to keep a close eye on an NI's movements. A few days later, he overheard the exact news and passed it on to Jiayu. At this time, an NI, who was heading to the airport, had no idea that danger was imminent. An accident was about to happen. Zifan hurriedly swerved the steering wheel and successfully avoided it, but the truck behind him continued to pursue relentlessly. An NI in the car felt a wave of panic. Just then, the truck actually came from the opposite direction on the small road. An NI felt desperate. At that moment, a motorcycle sped out of the side road and shot the tires of the truck several times. Zifan saw the opportunity and successfully avoided it again. The soldier on the truck fired at the motorcycle, starting a gunfight. Unexpectedly, the motorcycle's center of gravity was unstable and it fell directly to the ground. Then the truck began to pursue its victory and rammed the car in front of it, directly stopping the car in the middle of the road. Before the two of them could recover from their shock, the truck was heading straight towards them. An NI was so panicked that she couldn't unbuckle her seatbelt. Jihao then appeared on his motorcycle, looking very cool. An NI was completely dumbfounded. Jihao raced towards the truck. Then he performed a somersault on the road, throwing the motorcycle away. The motorcycle slowed down the truck. Jihao quickly took out his pistol and shot several times at the explosive device on the motorcycle. He successfully detonated it, causing a huge fire. An NI, exhausted, ran towards Jihao and asked him if he was hurt. Just as they let their guard down, the driver of the truck got out. Jihao saw this and quickly threw himself in front of him, successfully blocking the bullet for an NI. Zifan, who was behind them, pulled out his pistol, but was also shot in the thigh and fell to the ground. At this time, Jihao used his last ounce of strength to kill the opponent. Seeing Jihao unconscious in front of her, an NI panicked. Zifan told her to hurry up or she would miss her flight. An NI gave up the opportunity to return to her country for Jihao. She immediately drove Jihao to the nearest hospital. Jihao was still in a state of shock due to heavy bleeding from his shoulder. If his heart stopped, it would be even more troublesome. At this critical juncture, the hospital did not have any matching blood. Fortunately, an NI's blood type was O positive, which could be transfused to anyone. In the end, Jihao was rescued in time and out of danger. An NI stayed by his side all night. When Jihao woke up, he pushed an NI away. He was very angry. Why didn't an NI choose to leave? An NI said that she really couldn't leave at that time. Jihao, however, told her, "We risked everything to send you home alone. What kind of desperate situation did you want to push us into? How much more trouble do you have to cause before you feel guilty?" These words made an NI burst into tears. An NI left on the pretext that he needed to rest. The doctor who came to check on him told Jihao, "You and your girlfriend are a match made in heaven. Even your blood types are the same. If she hadn't given you a blood transfusion in time, something really bad would have happened." When an NI came outside, She wanted to just walk away, but she didn't know where to go. When she turned around, she suddenly found Jihao standing in front of her. And Ni told him to go back and rest. Jihao sincerely apologized to her. And Ni said, "Compared to forgiving you, it's nothing that you're alive." Jihao knew very well that she really wanted to leave, but Ni also wanted to protect him for once. Before Ni could react, Jihao kissed her. The next day, when the nurse took Jihao's temperature, she noticed that his face was particularly red, and there were no signs of a fever when she looked at the thermometer. The nurse asked Jihao if he had seen something he shouldn't have. In the early morning, there was darkness at the door. Someone was kissing there, unable to let go, and Ni felt uncomfortable immediately after hearing this. And Jihao's blood pressure also soared. The nurse was so scared that she hurriedly reported to the doctor. The two looked at each other awkwardly, and Ni mended his clothes and then put them aside before turning and leaving. Jihao turned his head and saw that it was actually a red heart. He was secretly happy, and Ni had just walked out the door when she saw the team members arrive at the hospital. Seeing Jihao pretending to be asleep, Zihe mocked him, saying that how could he, who was usually so awe-inspiring, get shot? And Ni hurriedly explained that he had blocked the bullet to protect me. Zihe said that there was a high possibility that he couldn't avoid it, and Ni didn't want them to say any more nonsense, so she hurriedly sent them out. It turned out that Ni had long known that Jihao was pretending to be asleep, and asked him if he couldn't avoid the bullet. Jihao had to tell her that he had deliberately not avoided it. If he had avoided the bullet, you would have been hit. This made Ni a little moved. That night, Ni wanted to sleep on the ground. Jihao was worried that the ground was cold and asked her to sleep on the bed and he would sleep on the ground, but Ni was worried about his injuries and did not let him go down. In the end, the two of them squeezed into a small hospital bed. The next day, Ni contacted Chenjun at a public phone booth. Chenjun did not want to talk on the phone and wanted to meet in person. When Ni walked out of the phone booth, she saw a large group of armed men. She quickly hid. What she did not expect was that this group of people had come to capture the injured Jihao. Subsequently, a group of armed men forcibly pushed the door open. Jihao, who was in the hospital bed, did not show the slightest fear. Jiyu did not know how powerful Jihao's background was. He falsely accused Jihao of shooting at members of the military engineering unit in order to protect the spy. Jihao retorted that he was doing it to protect his woman, but Jiyu just wanted to take this opportunity to convict Jihao. Then he ordered his subordinates to urgently arrest Jihao. Unexpectedly, at this time, the director of the General Political Department arrived. This person is Jihao's father, and Ni, who returned to check the situation, accidentally saw Mali come to the hospital. She hurriedly pushed a patient and hid. Her father never understood why the security department wanted to arrest Jihao. He just scolded him. Just then, Mali and her mother arrived at the ward. In order to prevent this from happening again in the future, Mali's mother asked Jihao to change his career path. My family has enough of me being a widow. I can't let anything happen to Jihao again. Mali couldn't listen anymore and immediately stopped her nagging mother. Jihao tells everyone that the operation went well and that he will recover soon. At this point, Mali sees the heart-shaped pendant on Jihao's shirt and immediately understands everything. After the parents leave, Mali asks Jihao if the woman is the one taking care of you. Jihao also confesses to her that he is indeed in love with Ni. I used to think that even if I didn't like you, I could still marry you, but now I really can't do it. I have someone I like in my heart, but I still have to marry you. Mali, however, attributed all the problems to Ni's departure. You are afraid that you will never see her again, so she makes your heart feel excited. You mistakenly think that feeling is love. Anyway, there will be no changes to our marriage. Since you like him so much, go ahead and like him. After she leaves, all those feelings will disappear. At this time, Ni had already been picked up by Chenjun. The two went to Chenjun's place, and Ni hurriedly asked him if he had passed on the news to her father. Chenjun had to lie and say that he had already told her family. When they heard that you were still alive, they were very happy. Even the shareholders' meeting was postponed because you weren't there. However, that was not the case. At the shareholders' meeting, my father announced Ni's death on the spot, causing a shock in the audience. Mali wanted to marry Jihao as soon as possible. Her mother took her to choose a wedding dress. The shop owner took out the most popular fashion magazine in Korea, and Mali saw Ni's photo in it. It turned out to be the fashion company founded by Ni, and it also described in detail Ni's death. Mali tore off a page and hurriedly left. At this time, Jihao discovered Ni's disappearance. He saw Chenjun's figure in the surveillance footage in the hospital. By tracing the license plate number, he learned that the car belonged to the guest house. Jihao also learned the exact location from his leader. Then Jihao, despite his injured body, wanted to find Ni. Unexpectedly, he happened to meet Mali, who was rushing angrily. She directly revealed Ni's true identity, and asked Jihao why she was here. Jihao had to explain at first it was an accident, and then it was a coincidence. You helped that woman hide, which may cost you everything you have. She may kill you. In that case, would you still like her? Jihao confessed that no one would want to die, but there was nothing he could do about it. It turned out that Jihao's brother, who loved him very much, was killed in a premeditated accident. Since then, He has felt deeply remorseful. Since you don't care about anything and just want to protect that woman, I am also willing to do anything to protect my fiancé. I can't just stand by and watch you kill yourself. Jihao was just about to leave when Molly warned him not to do anything you would regret. Jihao then went to the mountains to look for an NI. Meanwhile, an NI asked Shenjun what method he wanted to use to send her back to China. Shenjun vowed to the tower that he would not use dangerous methods to take you away, but instead, he would sit back and relax in business class and go home. It turns out that Shenjun, who holds a British passport, only needs an NI to marry him, and then ask the embassy to issue a new passport so that he can return to South Korea as his wife. For this reason, he had already prepared the relevant documents. All that was missing was an NI's nod of consent. An NI then looked at the relevant documents in her room. At this time, Shenjun told her that it was Christmas Eve and wanted to have dinner with her. And NI got up and saw the heavy snow outside. The sadness of being in a foreign country came naturally. After the two sat down, Shenjun brought up the matter of getting married just now. Although it was just a formality, they still had to do everything that needed to be done. Then he got up and came to an NI's side and put a ring on her finger. And NI looked surprised. Meanwhile, Jihao had made his way through the forest to Shenjun's place. He crept up cautiously and opened the box containing the main power switch, turning it off. The room was plunged into darkness. The two of them still don't know what's going on. Outside, Jihao was already fighting with the security guards, and NI was surprised to see Jihao outside. Why is he here instead of staying at the hospital? Seeing that Jihao was injured by the security guards, an NI didn't hesitate to rush out. Shenjun told an NI that staying with him would cause endless trouble. Even if you go back safe and sound, will Jihao be safe and sound? Even Molly knows who you are now. If she finds out that Jihao is protecting you, Molly won't let it go. She'll reveal everything and Jihao will die here. If you close your eyes and bear it, everything will go back to the way it was. After hearing these words, an NI also made a decision. She came outside and deliberately provoked Jihao. She scolded him for coming here. Jihao explained that he came to pick you up. I thought you might be waiting for me. An NI held back her tears and said, I'm not waiting for you, and now I've said yes to Shenjun's proposal. At that moment, Jihao also saw the ring on an NI's hand. An NI told him not to get in her way. She just wants to get out of here as soon as possible. It's really burdensome and disgusting for you to come to me now. Jihao walked up and said, Are you serious? In the end, Jihao respected an NI's choice and left alone in the snowy night. At that moment, an NI couldn't hide the pain in her heart and cried out. Then she began to worry about Jihao. What if he collapsed on the side of the road on such a cold day? After much deliberation, an NI drove after him. The snow was getting heavier and heavier. An NI finally saw Jihao in front of her. She hurriedly got out of the car and came to Jihao's side. Jihao took an NI in his arms and never let her go. That day, Hao Yu was caught eavesdropping and beaten up. He fell to his knees and begged to be spared, but he took out a knife and tried to cut off his ear. Hao Yu was trembling with fear. Suddenly, he was kicked away. This man was Jihao's brother, Wu Hao. The soldiers ran away in fear when they saw the officer coming. Wu Hao extended his hand to him. It was the first time Hao Yu felt respected, and he was the one who gave him the information about Wu Hao's death. Since then, he lived in deep remorse. He often went out to drink in the middle of the night when he couldn't sleep. Eventually he confessed everything to his wife of many years. He told her that Jihao's brother was killed by himself. His wife was shocked. He didn't know how to face Jihao. If I have to kill those who respect me and serve those who despise me, then my life is really too sad. Encouraged by his wife, he finally made a change. The next day when he overheard an NI's message again, Hao Yu knew that the two of them had finally returned home safely. Then the phone rang. It was Jiyu who wanted to know if Jihao and an NI had returned. He had to lie about the information, but Jihao and an NI had already returned home. A group of old ladies surrounded an NI again and warmed her up. An NI wanted to thank them for their help. She wanted to give them a gift in return. One of them said, You're the poorest of us all. And NI immediately showed her big diamond ring. Then they went to the pawn shop. The owner looked at it with a magnifying glass, and the lady came out to vouch for it and started negotiating the price right away. Before the owner could say anything, an NI said, Let's start with $5 million. Everyone around her was shocked. The boss was so angry that he took out all his belongings. The total amount was only $140,000. And NI immediately said it was a bargain, but the boss didn't want to do it. Then an old lady whispered something in his ear. The owner's mouth dropped open. Then she offered to trade her diamond ring for a piece of the store. And NI immediately spotted a men's watch in the store. After the deal was made, a group of people paraded down the street with the exchanged items, and NI was full of joy as she held the packaged watch. She was curious and asked, What did you say to the boss? On an NI's way home with her gift, she was blocked by two men. They pulled out a gun and threatened her. An NI panicked and was taken away by force. The gift fell to the ground. An NI was taken to the car by the thugs and took out her cell phone to make the call they asked her to make. When Jihao returned home, he was very happy to see the Christmas tree prepared by an NI. As soon as he stepped out, he got a call from NNI. NNI told Jihao that she wanted to leave with Chinjun, but Jihao wanted the two of them to have an official goodbye. He'll run there no matter how far it is. NNI told him not to be so stubborn and wished him well. Then the villains told her to put down the phone. Finally, NNI confessed her love to Jihao. Then he heard a gunshot and Jihao froze in his tracks. At that moment, Jayu came out of the house with his team and asked NNI where she was, because he had already found out that NNI was not a secret agent. This was enough to bring Jihao and his family to ruin. When Jihao heard that, he got angry and grabbed him and punched him hard. He was about to give him another lesson when he was stopped by a group of soldiers. Then Jihao was knocked to the ground. The soldiers showed no mercy to him. Jayu looked victorious and asked his men to take Jihao away. He was finally taken into custody, and NNI was also imprisoned in her room. No matter how much she shouts, no one answers, and there were cameras watching her. Molly never imagined that her first meeting would be in such a place, and to find out NNI's whereabouts. This made Molly furious. A man whose wedding is approaching is still worried about the safety of other women. It's better if you stay here before the wedding. At that moment, Jihao also guessed that Molly went to his father for help. Hearing that Jihao was so worried about NNI's safety, Molly had to tell him that he had killed her. Before leaving, Jihao asked Molly to tell his father that he wouldn't be satisfied if something happened to NNI. At this moment, an angry Molly is disappointed with him. In order to get out of there as soon as possible, Jihao asked his squadron members to spread rumors about his family's background. Zihi laughed out loud when he said he was the son of the general political director. Jihao wanted to spread the rumor to find a way out, so he needed their help. But Zihi felt as if he had injured his brain after he was shot. Jihao, who was behind him, overheard this and claimed that it was all true. They then went to the restroom to spread the rumor as Jihao told them to. After they left, many people overheard them. Everyone believed Jihao's words. As expected, the rumor spread throughout the village within half a day. When she got home, Sanzu asked her husband about Jihao. He said that young people these days have no respect for each other. How could he defy his boss? He won't get out for a while. Do you know why he's so arrogant and fearless? The husband told Sanzu to get to the point. When he found out that Jihao was the son of the head of the Politburo, Osamu was so scared that he ran out of the house with his shoes. On the other side, the dark attic was suddenly opened and two soldiers took NNI away by force. NNI was taken to Jihao's father. She thought it was Mali's father. He looks exactly like Mali, especially the way he looks at people. NNI understands that the chief kidnapped her. After all, she's hindering her daughter's future and affecting their relationship. The chief asked her why she stayed with Jihao. That's not fair. I was blown here by a tornado. I'm a victim too. In that case, and then I had to say that she's the daughter of a rich family, and she owns a huge fashion company. Why would I come here to make a fool of myself like that? The only thing that matters to a woman who owns everything is how to spend her money, and whether she can spend it all before she dies. And Jihao only took me in on a humanitarian mission. The director said that's all your relationship is? And then I had to confess that she liked Jihao. It's the kind of thing you don't realize you like, but you don't have to worry. He should think I'm back in the country now. Then NNI called out to her uncle to ask him to help her. Since you can kidnap me, you're in a position of power. Jihao is just a David, really no power to speak of. The director was so angry that he coughed. If you agree to help me, I'll pay you handsomely when I get back. Then after an intense eye contact between the two, then NNI was locked up again. Jihao's mother saw her not eating or drinking. Having overheard her conversation, she felt that NNI was very fond of Jihao, so Jihao's mother brought NNI to the bedroom. When NNI saw the bookshelves in the room, she felt a sense of familiarity. This is the same as Jihao's style. The thought immediately made her realize that the person standing in front of her was Jihao's mother. Staying in Jihao's room made NNI unable to sleep for a while. She got up and started looking through Jihao's childhood photo albums. She kept praising how he grew up to be so handsome. She also praised his lovely handwriting. The next day, Jihao's mother made a bowl of noodles for NNI. NNI tasted it and praised Jihao for inheriting his mother's cooking skills. Did Jihao ever make you noodles? Not only did he make me delicious noodles, but he also made me a nice cup of coffee. He's as warm as you are. Since a certain moment, Jihao won't let anyone stay with him and he's so cold. But you say he's warm. That's great. Mother seems to recognize her future daughter-in-law. At that moment, Jihao was also released by the colonel through his connections. When he got out, he went straight to his parents' house. As soon as he entered the house, Jihao angrily asked his father where NNI was. His father scolded him for not caring about his future, but Jihao said he did it because he was worried. He didn't want to keep thinking about this day and regretting it. If I had acted faster, would I have been able to protect her? If I had done a better job, could I have saved her? He didn't want to dwell on that kind of remorse. Jihao's failure to protect his brother had always made him regretful, and he couldn't breathe on the way home. He was afraid that something would happen to NNI because of him. If anything happened to NNI, his life would be worse than death. Then suddenly his mother came out and told him to breathe. Then she pulled NNI out. The moment they looked at each other, There was love in their eyes. NNI saw the wounds on Jihao's face and was heartbroken. Jihao apologized for being late, but NNI said she should apologize for causing you so much trouble every time. Jihao wipes the tears from her eyes. The two of them are so close that their father can't even watch. After calming down, his father asks Jihao if he feels better now, and NNI whispered to Jihao to apologize to his father. This action was very pleasing to the future in-laws. You can't be angry like an unfilial son. Jihao asked her whose side you're on, after being reprimanded by his father. Jihao knew better than to lower his stance. His father accused him of harboring an NI and almost destroying the family. Jihao immediately admits that it's all his fault and has nothing to do with an NI, but his father said that an NI had already admitted that it was all her fault. It was because she threatened you that you couldn't report her to the Defense Department. Jihao hurriedly explained that he didn't report it because he was afraid that an NI would be hurt. No one knows what will happen to an NI if he goes to the security department. He could get hurt or used, or he could disappear without even realizing it. That's why L can't send her there. And NI was touched. The two of them communicated their love for each other with their eyes. Their father couldn't stand this scene and told them to leave. Jihao took an NI and got up to leave. The reasonable mother wants to keep them for dinner, so the three of them abandoned him in front of his father's speechless eyes. On the other hand, Molly found Chenjun in a bad mood. She told him that she'd been in love with Jihao since high school. At that time, Jihao was very good at basketball. He also won 3 top prizes in the national art competition. From then on, Molly only had eyes for him. After their engagement, Molly flew to Switzerland to look for Jihao with great joy. But when they met, he politely shook Molly's hand as if it was his first time. This made Molly realize that he hadn't even noticed him. He knew Jihao before NNI did, but now he's in such a state. And Molly's drunken look also made Chenjun feel something in his heart. The more he looks, the more he likes him. But Molly taunted him that you're not bad looking. But he was still dumped by that woman. If you hadn't been dumped, things wouldn't have turned out like this. In the end, the drunken Molly was carried back home by Chenjun, who wanted to keep him here for the night. The mother was so scared that she stared blankly. At this time, NNI felt uneasy and uncomfortable sleeping in Jihao's house. So NNI played a song and asked Jihao what it was called. She had asked a lot of people who knew about music, but no one knew. Jihao was shocked when he heard it. He got up and asked NNI how he knew it. NNI explained to him that she heard someone playing it by chance while traveling in Switzerland. She heard it and liked it, so she wrote it down. Then Jihao played it on the spot. NNI was surprised. After hearing about her brother's death, Jihao played it for the last time at the beautiful lake before he left Switzerland after hearing about his brother's death. It was fate that NNI, who was traveling, heard it in just 7 seconds. NNI thought it was unbelievable. At that time, NNI was already sick of the world. She wanted to find a beautiful place and disappear quietly without causing any trouble. But you saved me in that place. Jihao suddenly told her that you can go back tomorrow. That made NNI freeze in her tracks. It turned out that Jihao had asked the colonel for a favor when he got out of the detention center, so that the squadron could send NNI back the same way. Once everything was ready, they set off. At that moment, Xia Yu, together with the Minister of Military Affairs, broke into the director's house. He wanted to use this opportunity to take down the director. To do so, he produced an emergency search warrant. So Xiaoyu led the soldiers to search NNI's whereabouts. The chief looked at his watch and saw that 2 hours had passed. He thought it should be over. The military minister was embarrassed to say that he had received the wrong action. When he saw Xiaoyu returning disappointed, he went up and kicked him. You're useless. What kind of place do you think this is? How dare you joke around? Xiaoyu did not show any weakness and asked the director where Jihao had taken the woman. The chief is not surprised and says that there are deserters on the front line. Jihao, as a squadron leader, made an emergency shift and is now at the front line. The military minister apologized. Xiaoyu continued to claim that Jihao did that to cover NNI's return. Seeing his arrogance, the military minister gave him a big slap in the face. He assured the chief that he would punish him. Then he ordered him to be taken away. The members of the squadron took an NI through a long and difficult journey to the depths of the forest. They stopped near a broken house. They had to wait until dark. Everyone was very sad before leaving. An NI told everyone to eat regularly and live well, no matter what. That night Jihao jumped into a boat with an NI. They crossed a river and went ashore. This road goes all the way to the South Korean border. It's only an hour or 2 round trip. Jihao took an NI on a long detour. He lied about his poor eyesight at night. In fact, his eyes are the best at night. He did this so he could spend more time with an NI. The two of them finally arrived at the military demarcation line. An NI wanted him to walk with him for a while, but Jihao, as an officer, couldn't take a single step. He told an NI to walk along the rocks. With tears in his eyes, an NI crosses the path with reluctance. Jihao rushed over and grabbed her. Then they couldn't help but nibble on each other's lips. After returning home, an NI immediately attended her own funeral. She immediately stopped the staff from laying flowers. She also expressed her displeasure at the selection of the last photographs. Then she picked up the list of names on the register. An NI took off her glasses in style. The moment she turned around, She scared the mourners, and Ni apologized to those who were surprised. In order to express his apology and to commemorate this moment, starting today, for 1 week, the company's entire line of merchandise will be sold at half price. Her brand has never been sold at a discount since its inception. At that moment, an Ni's sister-in-law was holding an emergency meeting. Her main objective is to merge an Ni's company. Just when the meeting was about to start voting, an Ni came over to the meeting in a domineering manner. Everyone was startled. Sister-in-law's eyes widened. Everyone couldn't believe that an Ni was still alive. An Ni said what it was like to have a secret meeting at his own funeral. Those who raised their hands just now, forget it and get back to work. Everyone in the room dispersed in fear. The weak-minded sister-in-law tried to explain, but an Ni didn't give her a chance. Since an Ni's departure, Jihao's lovesickness has reached a critical stage. On Jihao's way back, he saw a sneaky man. When he got closer, it turned out to be Hao Yu. He couldn't stand the condemnation in his heart any longer and confessed to Jihao. So he took out the wallet that Jihao had helped him get back. Then he took out a note from it. Jihao took it and saw that it was signed by his brother. It turned out that Hao Yu and Jihao's brother had known each other for a long time. 10 years ago, Hao Yu and his wife took their sick son to the hospital. At that time, when the new influenza virus was raging, all the medicines were used up. Only the Army General Hospital had medicine. When they got home, the boy's fever wouldn't go down. The only thing he was waiting for was death. That's when Wu Hao came with the medical staff. After treatment, the child smiled. Hao Yu took out the only money he had and asked Wu Hao to take it. Wu Hao had no choice but to accept it. Then Jie Yu threatened Hao Yu's mother to listen to Wu Hao's whereabouts. Hao Yu was forced to comply. During the wiretap, he learned that Wu Hao already knew about Jie Yu's crime. As a precaution, he kept one piece of evidence on his person and the other in his watch, and Jie Yu overheard it all. So he tried to kill Wu Hao with his own truck unit, with Hao Yu's eavesdropping along the way. Hao Yu's eavesdropping ended his young life with a huge crash. When Hao Yu got home, his wife told him that Wu Hao had just come to see you. He even bought some good meat to celebrate your birthday, and he gave Hao Yu a wallet. When his wife opened the wallet, the money inside was the money for his medical bills. At that moment, Jihao returned the money to him as a gift. There was also a letter in the box. Wu Hao told him to keep the wallet with him, so that good luck would always be with him and his family. We'll have a drink when he comes back. At that moment, Hao Yu was devastated. Before he died, Wu Hao was still thinking about him. The only person who respected him was killed by himself. Hao Yu knelt in front of Jihao to atone for his sins. He'll accept whatever happens to him, as long as he protects his family. Then Hao Yu took out the watch and the recording of the phone call before the accident. This watch was given to his brother by Jihao when he left the country. After the accident, Hao Yu pawned it off. An Ni bought it and wanted to give it to Jihao, but an Ni was kidnapped on her way home. On his way home. And Hao Yu's son saw the gift. Hao Yu's son saw it and handed it over to him. He was shocked to see it. That night, Jihao dismantled the watch and took out the memory card. It contained all of Jie Yu's criminal records. Jihao also faxed the file to his father. The director was shocked to see that the report was from a dead adult. The next day, the military court tried Jie Yu for his crimes. Since all the evidence provided by Jihao is true, this exposed Jie Yu's crime. But he tried to defend himself in court. He claimed that he didn't know the truck drivers at all, so they were all in collusion. Seeing that he wouldn't give in, Jihao had to take out the high-strength material from the truck. This is the raw material used to build special armor. In the end, with strong evidence, Jie Yu was sentenced to life imprisonment with confiscation of all his ill-gotten gains. There will be no right of appeal. The dying Jie Yu still didn't want to let Jihao go in this situation. After returning, Jihao felt that he had missed some information. After careful comparison, surprisingly found that there was a discrepancy between the amount of smuggled special steel and the amount of confiscated armor. This immediately made Jihao realize that there was another armored truck. As expected, this fully loaded truck roared. The purpose of the trip was to free the escorted Jie Yu. Jie Yu was successfully rescued under the powerful impact of the truck. When Jihao returned to his office, he saw an envelope on his desk. When he opened it, he saw an Ni's picture. Then he got a call from Jie Yu. Jihao realized that he had escaped and was on his way to Korea to kill an Ni. That night, when an Ni came home from work, she was followed by someone in the underground parking lot. Luckily, security guards showed up just in time and she escaped. The person who followed her was Jie Yu. At night, an Ni couldn't sleep. She'd run out of the sleeping pills she always relied on, so she decided to take a walk outside. An Ni walks alone on the street, but in her heart, she misses Jihao. Suddenly, she spotted a familiar figure in the crowd in the distance. Jihao's sudden appearance shocked and excited an Ni, because an Ni didn't tell her exact location before. Jihao searched for a long time before coming to an Ni. An Ni was puzzled by Jihao's sudden appearance. "Did you betray your country to settle here for me?" Jihao said he was just stopping by. An Ni saw him coming and going as he pleased. "Then why did I stay in the north for so long?" Jihao told her it wasn't that easy. He came here to capture Jie Yu, the defector, and Jie Yu's target here is you. This shocked an Ni at once. "If his first target is me, then you have to protect me first." An Ni took this opportunity to keep Jihao close to her. When she saw the crowd outside, she immediately got up and left. She also put Jihao in a tight position to prevent surveillance cameras from all directions. As long as your handsome face is captured on camera, it'll be all over the country in less than 30 minutes. Jihao actually believed it. And then I will move him to a place where no one can see him but herself. Then she took Jihao to her own home under the cover of her honor. When he got home, Anai took off her clothes in a hurry. Jihao's eyes were almost straight, faced with such embarrassment. Anai hurriedly said, "It's late, aren't you hungry?" So she opened the refrigerator and found it full of mineral water. Jihao poked his head over and mocked her. "Every time you open your mouth, you show off your wealth. But how come there's no food in the fridge?" And Anai turned off the refrigerator in embarrassment. She explained that she would never eat more than 3 bites of any food. But in Jihao's memory, she never ate less than 3 bites. That's because of the special circumstances and the instinct to survive. Then NNI ordered takeout for Jihao. At that time, the squadron members also came to Korea because they had no money. They stood outside the restaurant and watched others eating fried chicken. They wondered how rich the chicken eaters here were. It turns out that they sneaked into Korea under the name of participating in the World Military Games. Jihao's father arranged all this to bring Jihao back. Even now, and NNI can't believe that she's dining with Jihao in her own home. Jihao asked her how she was getting along with her family, and NNI lied that everything was fine. Just then the doorbell suddenly rang and NNI told him not to be alarmed. "I'm a big shot here, and the building is heavily guarded." And NNI saw on the screen that it was her brother and sister-in-law. She thought they'd leave without responding, but her sister-in-law knew that she didn't open the door on purpose, so she went up and pressed the code. And NNI immediately panicked and told Jihao to hide. As soon as NNI reached the door, her brother and sister-in-law forced their way in. Brother told NNI to stop acting. He couldn't stand it anymore. He knew about NNI's stay in the north. He threatened NNI not to play tricks to get his father to stop him from inheriting the company. Otherwise, he will easily destroy NNI through rumors. Jihao, who was hiding, overheard these words. He immediately realized that NNI was not getting along with his family, and NNI pretended not to understand what they were saying. At that moment, his sister-in-law took out her cell phone and showed evidence of her stay in North Korea, and NNI instantly realized that her brother didn't want her to come back. Seeing their ugly faces, and NNI threatened that she would never let them go. Just as they were leaving, her sister-in-law saw a pair of men's shoes at the door. It made her realize something. When she saw Jihao coming out, and NNI told him not to say anything. She felt so humiliated right now. Jihao came forward and hugged NNI, which instantly made her feel warm. Jihao reassured her that it's not the people you hate but the people you love that you can't forget in life. If you put the person you hate in your heart will only be hurt and hurt. In the end, you're the one who suffers. Jihao's healing words immediately made NNI lose her hatred. That night, the members of the squadron paid 10,000 won each to go to the steam room. In order not to waste the money, they planned to stock up on heat. They had to hold back their hunger for a while. When they saw Zifan bringing in a lot of good food, they asked him where he got it from. Zifan said that the boss's wife said they didn't need to pay in cash. Just look at the number on their hands. The people here are really humane. Jinho thought you must be handsome to give them to you. Zihi also wanted to challenge him. The next day, after enjoying a luxurious life, when they were about to put down their license plates and leave, the owner's wife stopped them and told them to pay the bill. At this moment, they all looked at each other and were immediately dumbfounded. Hao touched Zihi's glowing and elastic face and immediately understood everything. And NNI hurriedly changed the fingerprint office for safety, and he also asked Jihao to enter his fingerprints. Then they went to the parking lot. Jihao knocked on the car a few times and NNI looked puzzled. Jihao explains to her that this is done in winter before getting into the car so that animals don't hide under the hood to avoid the cold. And NNI laughed and claimed that this was a parking lot and it wasn't cold at all, so there wouldn't be any animals. As soon as she said that, a cat ran out from under the car, and NNI was shocked and said she would do the same in the future. Then the bossy lady took Jihao to an upscale shopping mall, and NNI was shocked when she saw Jihao come out in a suit. Then Jihao changed into another suit and she still had the same look on her face. The waiter's look of infatuation immediately made NNI jealous. Then she chose another one for Jihao. When Jihao came out of the room looking handsome, it was NNI's turn to be enamored. The waitress grabbed Jihao and complimented him on his perfect fit. "You'll look better than the model in this outfit." When NNI saw his restless hands, he hurriedly walked over to block the waiter's way. After being praised by the shopkeeper, NNI happily bought a lot of clothes. Just when NNI wanted to pay, Jihao stopped him immediately. NNI told him that spending tens of millions of won on clothes is a common thing. When he left, Jihao opened the door for NNI. Then he just stood there as a good Samaritan. Jihao's handsome look immediately attracted a lot of women to take pictures. When they came to the office, NNI got a lot of face from the stares of the people around them. Then they met NNI's assistant. NNI hurriedly explained that this is his personal bodyguard, but the assistant says it's a sign of things to come. NNI leaves for a meeting in order to get away. When he got to the office, the assistant called Ji Hao over. He asked Ji Hao to join him for a bite to eat, because the meeting was going to be late today. Ji Hao said he wanted to eat with an NI. Looks like you don't know what's going on. It could have been an accident. Our CEO eats alone. She doesn't like people around her and hates being talked to. And she's as sensitive as a cat. She only eats eggs that have been boiled for 8 minutes and 27 seconds. He won't eat them after that time. But Ji Hao saw an NI devouring them. A colleague reminded him that he had to know an NI's preferences so that it would last longer. On the way home, Ji Hao asked an NI if I didn't know your preferences well. Your subordinate seems to know exactly what kind of boiled eggs you like, but an NI said it doesn't matter what she likes. What matters is that you know what I like best. The next day, an NI saw a hit on the internet. It turned out to be a video of Ji Hao helping people in front of the mall. Netizens were divided. Some said he was a gentleman. Others said his legs were too long. Ji Hao pointed to the comment section and said, "What's the meaning of face genius?" And then I told him that it describes a handsome face. Ji Hao was so happy to see so many comments praising him. He took the computer for himself, but they didn't know that Jiyu was already outside the door. Suddenly the phone rang, and NI thinks it's his phone. But it turns out to be Ji Hao. Ji Hao gets Jiyu's whereabouts through an agent and asks to meet him tonight. And NI was worried about his safety. So she entered her number into his cell phone and downloaded an app that allows him to share his location. When Ji Hao arrived at the appointment place and opened the door, he realized he had been fooled. And NI came home from work and passed by Jiyu without realizing it. And NI arrived at the underground parking lot and knocked on the car like Ji Hao did. She accidentally saw a man sitting in the car, so she pretended she didn't see anything and left. When she heard the car door being pushed open, and NI ran away frantically. Jiyu is in pursuit. While running, NI's cell phone accidentally fell on the ground. She couldn't care less but kept running for her life. Ji Hao quickly finished the bad guys and came outside. He called NI, but there was no answer. After checking the location app on his cell phone, he runs towards the marked spot. Jiyu starts a cat-and-mouse game in an empty parking lot. The witty NI rushed into the duty room, but Jiyu, who was looking for him in vain, also found the duty room. Then he pulled out a gun and approached. NI saw it on the security camera and was terrified. At that moment, NI's phone rang. Jiyu ran back and picked up the phone. It was Ji Hao. He told Ji Hao that he had an NI in his hands. He threatened Ji Hao not to call the police and told him to stay on the line and come over quickly. While he was on the phone, NI took the opportunity to slip out. When Jiyu opened the door of the duty room, he found no one there. Ji Hao came to the parking lot in a frenzy. He followed the instructions to move forward with his hands up, while Jiyu took his pistol and was ready to fire. NI immediately panicked at the sight. He turned off all the power and the parking lot went dark. NI loudly warned Ji Hao not to be deceived and to leave quickly. At this moment, Ji Hao and Jiyu are both trying to recognize NI's position through the sound. Suddenly a hand reached out and covered NI's mouth. It turned out to be Ji Hao. Once again, NI was able to escape from the danger, and Ji Hao was very worried about him. The next day, NI was going to meet the local gangsters, because Seoul was her turf. As soon as NI stepped into the room, a group of men stared at her, but she wasn't scared at all. She showed her dominant side right away. It turns out NI bought the whole building through a real estate agent. Now she owns the house. NI has even produced a contract for this. At that moment, one of the boys was about to get up when the boss stopped him. Seeing that they were not cooperating, NI wanted to give them a surprise. A week ago, there was a fight between a handsome man and some men, but the other guy said he didn't know. NI then said that if she provided information, the rent would be waived. Then she asked her assistant to bring out a picture of Jiyu and asked them to find him. Before leaving, she reminded them that the faster they found him, the more they would be paid. On the way back, the subordinates praised NI for being so cool and fearless. NI, however, said that he was definitely the type to return the favor, whether it was a favor or revenge. This immediately made NI think of her head of insurance, Shiokan, and she soon found him. It turns out that during NI's disappearance, Shiokan made a lot of efforts in many ways. Although they had never met, he was convinced that NI was still alive. On average, he called his assistant 37 times a day. He kept hundreds of messages and emails. It was through this persistence that he finally picked up NI's whereabouts from an airwave enthusiast. He was overjoyed, and NI admired his persistence. He immediately offered him 3 times his annual salary. He offered him 3 times his yearly salary and a huge bonus and asked him what he thought. At that moment, Ji Hao, who was bored at home, started to play a game, but he didn't realize that his opponent was Jin Ho. In the end, he was defeated by him. Angry, Ji Hao wanted to fight with him. He met an NI coming home from work. When confronted by an NI, Ji Hao lied that he was going out to meet someone. He said he was going out to meet someone and that he wasn't dangerous, but that he needed me to persuade him. And NI immediately realized something was wrong. It turned out that she had received a text message about a game prop transaction. And NI went to the computer and found Ji Hao still playing the game. She asked Ji Hao to take off his jacket and sit down and quit the game. Ji Hao looked reluctant, and NI said she'd only say it one last time. Ji Hao had no choice but to do as he was told. Jin Ho, who's shivering outside, is still taunting him that he doesn't dare to come. He didn't realize that he was his captain. And NI changed the internet connection at home to prevent Jihao from playing games. Jihao wanted to fight for it, but then NI didn't give him any mercy. That night, and NI saw Jihao drinking alone, so he drank with him. Jihao finally said what was in his heart. He didn't want to go back. He only wanted to stay here with an NI. When an NI heard that, he immediately sobered up half of his wine and drank another glass to let him continue. Jihao wanted to marry an NI and have a child. When an NI heard that, he took another drink. Jihao wanted to revive her dream of playing the piano. An NI hastened to offer to give him a recital. He even thought of buying the Hall of Arts. Don't look at me like I'm drunk, but I have the power. Then Jihao said what all women love to hear. He wanted to see an NI's gray hair and wrinkled face as she grew old. I'm sure you'll be beautiful then, too. An NI said she was aging very slowly. If you want to see me then, you have to stay by my side for a long time. If you want to stay by my side, don't go drinking anywhere else. Your drunken look fascinates me even more. If other women see you drunk, I'd be so anxious that I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Jihao immediately agreed. They even held hands and made a promise. The next day, Molly's mom opened the room and was shocked. Chen Jun woke up from his sleep. The moment he turned around, he was shocked. It was Molly who slept with him, holding the bottle. The day before, Chen Jun had no place to go, so he contacted Molly, because both of them wanted to break up Jihao and an NI. Molly was kind enough to let Chen Jun stay at his wedding house for a few days. That night Chen Jun called Molly to tell him he was sick. Molly was a bit impatient, but she brought her family some good food. She slipped out quietly so as not to make any noise. Molly was shocked when she walked in the door. The power was out. Then she cooked for Chen Jun. Chen Jun tasted the porridge and said it was too salty. When Molly heard this, she wanted to leave, but Chen Jun stopped her. He said that although he looks noble at first glance, in fact, he has a past that can make you cry. Eating this bowl of rice reminds me of my past when I ate salty kanji. What are you talking about? You think I don't know how you are in Korea? Molly found out from his uncle. Chen Jun was the crook who took an NI's brother's secret overseas funds, but Chen Jun complimented her on her intelligence-gathering skills. She's a perfect woman. If you want to cheat me and you want to cheat me, I advise you to stop dreaming. Chen Jun had to tell him about his family's change of heart. His father was cheated by someone he trusted and lost the company. Not long after, his father passed away and his mother remarried. The people who destroyed his father's company were an NI's family. In order to take revenge, he wanted to become the son-in-law of that family. He didn't realize that an NI was smart enough to see through his scheme. It was a failure. But her two brothers aren't that smart. Chen Jun saw an NI's brother's greed and took his money. He thought that taking back the money that belonged to his father would be revenge. But he was inexplicably unhappy. So he returned the money, so he could live happily without any burden. Maybe this is the real revenge, but Molly didn't agree with him. Whoever makes me cry has to make the other person cry in blood. That's real revenge. How long will it take for you to get your revenge if you're so weak? You have to get your energy up and go back to Korea to break an NI's family into pieces. When Chen Jun saw her excitement, he felt like she was going to take revenge. Then an angry Molly picked up a bottle of vodka and drank it all in one gulp. The next day, the two of them lay in the same bed. Molly's mom rushed over when she saw that she hadn't been home all night. As soon as she entered the door, she was shocked by Chen Jun's face. Chen Jun grabbed her hand and kneeled down as a gentleman. He asked her not to scold Molly too harshly. It was only after she had recovered that Molly's mother suddenly remembered to look for her daughter. When she came to her room, she saw her daughter sleeping soundly. Molly was immediately woken up by her mother. The door to the room was open just as his mother was scolding him. Chen Jun told both mother and daughter to come out and eat. When her mother came to the table, she noticed that the side dishes looked familiar. Molly seems a little guilty when she hears it. Her mother asks what their relationship is. Chen Jun hurriedly said that he was in love with Molly. I know she has a man in mind. Mother asked why she liked her. Chen Jun said that she was steady and she had an aristocratic demeanor, and the confidence and grace with which she is open and honest with everyone. These are all the reasons why I like her. Frankly speaking, I think she inherited all these qualities from her mother. When I got back, my mother kept praising Chen Jun for her intelligence and her ability to read people. Molly explained to her mother that it's not the kind of relationship you think it is. But her mother was not convinced that she carried you home in the middle of the night and you spent the night with her in the wedding room. In the face of Molly's rebuttal, her mother didn't believe her. That day, a group of village mothers discovered a shocking secret. They saw a man living in Jihao's matrimonial home, so they wanted to find out the truth. Chen Jun had just come out of the shower when he heard a knock on the door. The man outside shouted that he would break in if he didn't open the door. When he heard Molly's voice, Chen Jun immediately realized that the situation was not good. Before he could run away, a group of people pushed the door in. The scene made a group of Amazons drop their jaws. Molly was so shocked that he almost lost his footing. When Chen Jun turned around, they were stunned again. Then he slipped into the room. leaving Molly speechless. Jihao's men were amazed at the 100-meter building in front of them. They couldn't believe this was an NI's company. Then they waltzed in. An NI thanked his employees for their hard work. An NI gave them special bonuses in their cell phones. This act immediately caused a lot of cheers. Jihao looked at the bossy female CEO in front of him and saw how generous she was. The identity of the squadron members was recognized and they fled in fear. During the escape, Jinho fell to the ground. Jihao came out and saw the scene. When they ran outside, they realized that one of them had lost his shoes. Zihe took off his shoes for fear that he would get hurt walking. While he was feeling deeply sorry for himself, suddenly, he saw a man coming with his shoes. Jihao warmly put on his shoes. Seeing the captain's appearance, they cried and hugged each other. When an NI got the call, he rushed over with his car. An NI couldn't believe her eyes when she saw them. Then they hugged each other happily. When Jihao saw them, he rushed forward and pulled them apart. That night, an NI brought them to her mansion. They were curious about everything. He even invited them to eat barbecue with him, but Zihe said, "I'm not eating it because it's good. I'm going to eat all the food in your house just like you emptied the captain's house." An NI, tell him to try to carry it out. If you want to eat me up, you won't get enough chances in 10 lifetimes. Zifan asked Jihao why he didn't eat. Jihao said, "It makes me feel heavy when I think of all the suffering you've endured since you came here." Zihe saw the mountains of meat and said, "Although it's embarrassing to say this, but we're the ones who suffer. Why did you pile up all the meat in an NI's bowl?" The scene was awkward for a while. An NI, on the other hand, was full of joy. Minja hurriedly explained that a man like the captain is called a wife favorite in Korea. Jihao was not happy about it. An NI, however, said with a happy face that he really knows everything. Zihe also mocked Jihao for crossing the line for a woman. Jihao tried to explain, but an NI gagged him with a piece of meat. How you, who saw everyone's happiness, was deep in thought. He told Jihao what the director told him. "When we see you, we'll take you back to your country immediately, because we don't have much time left here." But Jihao was still worried that an NI would be hurt by Xiaoyu again. How you told Jihao not to worry about an NI's high position here and many people to protect her. She'll be fine. These words were also overheard by an NI, who was hiding at the side. The next day, before an NI left for work, she ran into Jihao and told him that they had agreed that he would stay here. An NI's words seemed to instantly make Jihao understand what she meant, but he didn't know that an NI was doing this because she was afraid that his family would be implicated. Jihao then left with the squadron members. Before closing the door, Jihao took one last look, as if he was full of nostalgia for this place. An NI, who works in the company, is always distracted. From time to time, checking her phone for messages from Jihao. When her mother learned that Jihao had hurt an NI, she hurried to the office. She had wanted to support an NI in her fight for the inheritance, but an NI didn't trust her mother. It turned out that when an NI was a child, her mother had taken her to the beach and then left under some pretext. An NI was convinced that her mother would come back, but after waiting for a long time, she didn't see her mother's figure. The next day, she was still saved by a kind person on the beach. An NI always thought that her birth had turned her mother's life into hell, so she hoped that her mother wouldn't come looking for her on her birthday. When an NI opened the door and returned home, she found the dark room empty. She called out Jihao's name, but there was no response. An NI immediately realized that they had really gone. It instantly made her collapse to the ground. Usually, she acted like a domineering female CEO, but now she had become a very ordinary little woman. Just as an NI felt sad and desperate, suddenly the lights came on, and Jihao and his friends appeared before him, with flowers and birthday hats in their hands. When an NI heard that they were celebrating her birthday, she cried even more. She got up and left the place directly, leaving the group of people with a puzzled look on their faces. Jihao then hurriedly chased after her. He felt sorry for an NI for being frightened. An NI, however, said that she was not frightened, but was afraid that in the future, every birthday would remind her of how wonderful today was. Jihao hugged her from behind and assured her that all her birthdays would be good days, because he would always think of her and be grateful that she was born and that the person he loved could live in this world. An NI was deeply moved by his words. An NI, who had adjusted her mood, returned home. The squadron members sang a birthday song unique to North Korea for him, which made an NI very happy. Then Jihao took out a gift. An NI broke his hand with all her strength. It turned out to be a ring. Jihao looked nervous. An NI picked up the ring and noticed that it was a bit big and could only be worn on the thumb. Jihao then held out the other hand and it turned out to be a pair of rings for lovers. Jihao asked her if it was the first time a man had given her a gift, and that she should just wait patiently, and then he would put it on for her like this. This heart-melting move made an NI seriously doubt that Jihao was lying about having no experience in relationships. Then she put the ring on for Jihao too. An NI praised it as the most beautiful ring she had ever seen, and that she would never take it off. Holding hands with the one you love is a heartwarming sight that reinforces the couple's undying love for each other. In order to avoid revealing Jihao's identity, an NI dismissed the nanny and now has to clean up after them herself. Jinho immediately felt that the things here were really novel when he saw the vacuum cleaner. "If you can take it away, I'll buy it all for you." As soon as he finished speaking, and NI suddenly thought of something. Then she took out a credit card with no limit and told them to go spend it. This was a gift from an NI before they left. She told them not to worry about money and to go ahead and buy whatever they wanted. Then they rushed into an upscale shopping mall. Each of them bought several outfits. On the way back, they were happy as children. That day, the man who had a scandal with an NI actually shouted at her online. The secretary told Seri about it first. An NI told him not to make a fuss. It must be that person drunk and talking nonsense. But the secretary said that the reporter kept asking if you guys were getting back together. An NI immediately flew into a rage and retorted. The secretary kept on revealing an NI's past. An NI panicked instantly. Jihao pretended to be listening seriously. But in the end, an NI used her domineering CEO charm and told them to get back to work. Before leaving, the ungrateful secretary tried to get Jihao to leave with her, but an NI stopped her. She said that she had an important task to tell him in private. The secretary left with a puzzled look on her face. At this point, there were only 2 people left in the office. Jihao, however, looked unhappy, and NI, on the contrary, blamed Jihao for the problem after seeing it. In order not to make Jihao angry, she planned to skip work today and spend time with him. Subsequently, the 2 of them went to the cinema like a couple. They even held hands while watching a movie. Then they drove around for a while. When they arrived at a flyover, Jihao also told her about a time when he had skipped class to go outside and take pictures. There was a woman standing on the bridge, looking as if she was going to jump off at any moment, and that woman was my type. And then I became unhappy at hearing this and asked him to stop talking. But Jihao continued. I went over to her and asked her to take a photo of me. Even though her hands were shaking, she took my camera. It turned out that this woman was an NI. He couldn't help but wonder how many times the 2 of them had met before. Perhaps this was fate. After all the twists and turns, they would meet again. When Jihao and an NI arrived at the restaurant, they saw the squadron members excitedly watching a football match. Then an NI joined in. Just as Hao Yu went out to light a cigarette, he happened to meet Jiyu here. He was very angry at Hao Yu's betrayal and threatened him with a photo of his son. His goal was to get Hao Yu to help catch Jihao and an NI. This put Hao Yu in a dilemma. The next day, an NI applied a facial mask for the squadron members because she wanted to make them look more Korean. An NI also asked Minja to run an errand for her. Unaware of what was going on, Minja went to the agreed upon place. When he saw the beautiful woman in front of him, he instantly froze. Minja couldn't believe his eyes. This was something an NI had specially arranged for him. But when he met the goddess of his heart, he was so scared that he hid. His expression of crying with a smile instantly made the goddess laugh. Minja never imagined that he would be able to have dinner with his favorite goddess, facing the ageless goddess in front of him. Minja actually made this gesture. Afterwards, Minja even refused to eat dinner. He said that after having lunch with the goddess, his noble stomach could not hold any other food. And NI laughed after hearing this. Minja held the photo of him and the goddess as if it were precious. And NI then sat with them to say goodbye. The atmosphere instantly became tense. That night, everyone was preparing to leave Korea. Hao Yu, however, said that in order to prevent the other team members from discovering and proposing to split up, their conversation at this time was eavesdropped by Jiyu. He also learned that Jihao had an important matter to attend to. Jiyu then notified his subordinates to get rid of Jihao, and NI received a call from her brother informing her that her mother was sick. The brother on the other end of the phone had already colluded with Jiyu. He also provided him with a route map for an NI to her parents' house. The brother also said that no matter what happened to an NI, she just needed to disappear forever. Just as an NI was leaving the house, Hao Yu hurriedly informed Jiyu of her whereabouts. It wasn't long before 3 cars appeared on the road, tailing an NI. Eventually, 2 cars drove up ahead and blocked an NI in the middle of the road. Before an NI could react, a group of thugs got out of the cars with sticks and clubs. Then they came straight at an NI like crazy. Just then, the 4 car doors were opened in an instant. It turned out that after being threatened, Hao Yu did not choose to back down, but instead told Jihao about Jiyu's plan. After he reported an NI's whereabouts, the squadron members hurriedly got into an NI's car, and they didn't care at all about these thugs, even if they were attacked from behind. Zihe was unscathed. He turned around and punched, and NI was stunned by this scene. Then he saw them punching left and right like they were exercising. Zihe caught one and told him not to move. That way I'll be 100% accurate. Then he gave the other guy a punch in the air. The moment the trunk opened, Hao Yu slowly raised his head. I thought he was a king. I didn't expect him to be a rookie. Soon, the few of them took all the thugs down. At this time, Jihao went to meet Officer Park and realized he had been tricked. Jihao was not at all afraid. Then he started fighting with them. Although he was from the army, he was still outnumbered. Panicked, Officer Park came outside and saw the squadron members approaching from afar. He was so scared that he fled. At this time, the gangsters called by an NI also arrived. An NI waved their rent and told them to rush over. They saw the door slowly opening and the squadron members rushing over. When the 2 sides confronted each other, Jiyu realized Hao Yu's betrayal. He immediately aimed to shoot Jihao. Zihe quickly jumped into the air and pushed him down with a kick, and a scuffle ensued. In the midst of the deadly struggle between the two sides, Jiyu took the opportunity to abduct Hao Yu and drag him outside for a beating. And Ni, who was sitting in the car, was terrified when she saw Jihao coming out in pursuit. Sha Yu, who had been hiding, was already ready. Just as he picked up his gun and aimed at the defenseless Jihao, suddenly a car rushed over and successfully blocked the bullet for him, and Ni was shot on the spot and fainted. Jihao saw this and hurriedly shot Jiyu. Jiyu took the opportunity to hide behind the car. He was just about to pick up the pistol on the ground when Hao Yu, who had arrived, took the gun and aimed it at him. Jiyu was so scared that he kept backing up. Unexpectedly, Hao Yu's shot missed and instead let him slip away. Jihao saw Ni, who was covered in blood, and his grief made his eyes red with tears. After the squadron members arrived, saw Ni lying on the ground, unable to accept it. Zihe, who often argued with Ni, also shed tears, and Ni was then taken to the hospital. Her family also hurried over. Only Jihao stood outside the door, anxiously waiting, and this accident also made the squadron members miss the opportunity to return home. They were very worried about Ni's safety. It's been 3 days, and Ni has not yet woken up. Jihao has been guarding Ni's hospital room, but Ni's sister-in-law saw him. She asked the secretary for news about Jihao. When she learned that he was Ni's personal bodyguard, the second sister-in-law asked the secretary to send her Jihao's resume. The secretary, who was under Ni's orders, refused on the spot. Jiyu was successfully rescued with the help of Director Park. At this time, the second sister-in-law took advantage of the fact that Ni had not yet regained consciousness and fired Jihao. She wanted to replace the security guards with her own people, so Jihao could only wait outside, while the two brothers were still arguing about replacing their guards with their own. And Ni suddenly woke up and her sister-in-law noticed. Then she slowly opened her eyes and raised her hand to indicate that they should come closer. It turned out that she was telling them to get out. And Ni then called Jihao. And Ni told him that his personal bodyguard could not leave without permission. Jihao heard Ni's voice and quickly ran back to the hospital room. Seeing Ni in the hospital bed, he had already cried red eyes. He scolded Ni, "If you really died, how could I go on living?" The two people who had survived the disaster and loved each other embraced again. The squadron members who had learned the news hurried over. When they opened the door and saw this scene inside, they silently closed the door again. At this time, Ni saw them and gestured for them to come in. After the several people came in, they were so excited that they wanted to hug Ni, but Jihao stopped them on the spot, saying that he was hurt. In the end, they could only shake hands instead, but Zihe immediately said, "Did you just hug a piece of wood?" As he was about to go over, he was stopped by Jihao again. Jihao was very puzzled as to how they knew the news. They all looked at Hao Yu next to them. It turned out that Hao Yu had disguised himself as a cleaner and sneaked into Ni's ward and installed a bug under her hospital bed. They had been monitoring Ni's movements from outside. Hao Yu took out the recording and told Ni to listen to it carefully. Ni heard her mother's confession through the recording. It turned out that when she was little, her mother had brought her to the beach because at that time, she didn't want to live anymore. When she came back to look for her afterwards, she found that Ni had already disappeared. Her mother apologized to her in grief. After Ni heard these words, the estrangement between her and her mother that had lasted for many years was finally resolved. After she had finished crying, Jihao came to the ward, and Ni said that because of the scars from the operation, she would never be able to wear a bikini again. Jihao said that it wasn't even a scar, and hurriedly showed off the scar on his back. At the time, he had received 14 stitches without even using anesthetic. Seeing Ni so surprised, he showed her the gunshot wound on his shoulder. Not only that, but there was also a wound on his face. Just as Ni was looking closely, Jihao took the opportunity to kiss her. The two of them looked deeply into each other's eyes, a scene that happened to be seen by the subordinates who had rushed over. Seeing Jihao, who was disheveled, caused them to drop their jaws on the spot. Jihao hastily straightened his clothes. At this time, Ni was about to get up, but Jihao stopped her. He told her to lie down first, take a deep breath, and then slowly get up while exhaling. Even when Ni was injured, she didn't have to do anything herself. As long as she wanted to do something, Jihao would immediately do it for her. She even opened the bottle cap for her and cleaned anything out of her eyes, which left the squadron members dumbfounded. They couldn't bear to watch any longer and had to get up and leave. That day, Ni's brother brought someone to the hospital, but Jihao blocked them at the door. He angrily told his men to do it. However, the next second, several people were knocked to the ground. The secretary on the side instantly froze. My brother still wanted to show off, but he was directly pushed into the corner by Jihao. With no choice, My brother had to leave tactfully. Then the father brought the commissioner from the National Security Agency to an NI's hospital room. They suspected that the perpetrator of the shooting came from North Korea. The father asked an NI if she knew anything. Then the father gathered the family together. An NI wanted to use this to make a public announcement. She took out a recorder. Inside was evidence of her brother and sister-in-law's crime of trying to murder an NI. The truth shocked everyone when it was revealed. The angry father immediately relieved him of all his duties in the group. The father was preparing to convene an emergency shareholders meeting to completely sever the father-son relationship. After hearing this, the brother blamed his sister-in-law for everything. The sad mother got up and slapped him directly. The commissioner left just as he passed Jihao. It seemed that he had sensed something. Jihao also received Jiyu's exact location. The unrelenting sister-in-law learned from the phone that Jihao was also from North Korea. She then informed the commissioner of this important piece of information. Before leaving, Jihao briefed the squadron members and asked them to take care of an NI. If he didn't return in time, they must return to North Korea. Jihao then left the hospital and went to the meeting place. The police had already been keeping an eye on his movements. Jihao found out where Jiyu was hiding through his contact. Just as Jiyu was packing up to leave, Jihao blocked his way. He was willing to risk everything to kill the other party. Just then, the police outside also rushed over and told them to drop their weapons. Jiyu immediately raised his hands when he saw this. He knew Jihao wouldn't dare shoot him. It turned out that they had already been targeted by a sniper. Jiyu gave a strange smile. He slowly turned around and took out his pistol, trying to shoot Jihao, but Jihao dodged in time. He was shot immediately for this action, and Jihao rolled on the ground to successfully avoid the bullets. The villain Jiyu finally fell to the ground. Before he died, he told Jihao the truth. He had already sent Jihao and NI's information back to North Korea. Even if Jihao went back, his parents would not escape unscathed. In the end, Jiyu died like this. At this time, Jihao's mood was complex. Suddenly, the police broke through the window and entered. Under the loud shouts of the police, he slowly lowered his pistol. Then the personnel of the National Security Agency began to arrest the squadron members. An NI watched them being taken away in front of her. She immediately pulled out the syringe in her hand and walked out of the ward with difficulty to the lobby and saw that they had all been arrested. An NI hurried forward to try to explain everything. While upstairs, her second brother and sister-in-law looked coldly on, worried about an NI's condition. Her mother pulled her back in time. At this point, Chen Jun was also successfully captured by the hitman sent by his sister-in-law. So, in front of their father, an NI's second brother and sister-in-law slandered her again, saying that an NI had violated the national security law and that the bodyguard by her side was a spy. This scene was also overheard by their eldest brother and sister-in-law, who were hiding nearby. They turned around and went to the hospital room to inform an NI of the matter. An NI's older brother described to an NI what happened when the ugly things they did were made public. If it were me, I would be so ashamed that I couldn't hold my head up. And they even wanted to arrest Chen Jun for a face-to-face confrontation. An NI was shocked after hearing this, but the plan of an NI's second brother and sister-in-law still failed. The chairman, who had been Chen Jun's manager, released him while everyone else was asleep. He also asked the other party to tie himself up to create the illusion of an escape. On the other side, the National Intelligence Service tracked Jihao's phone and learned about his previous movements. The surveillance footage showed him helping other people. He has not done a single bad thing in South Korea. In order to find out the truth, the commissioner had to interrogate Jihao and why he came here illegally. At this time, Jihao had already had the idea of taking the blame. He said that an NI was a chaebol in South Korea and was desperately trying to win her over so that she would stay by his side. This incident has nothing to do with my subordinates. They came to participate in the World Military Games. It's all because of me that they can't return home as scheduled. When an NI learned the truth, she hurriedly defended Jihao. He didn't want to win me over or use me. He came here to arrest the criminal Jiyu. He was the one who took the initiative to hide him. Facing the two completely inconsistent statements, the police had to decide to let them confront each other. Jihao. So he said a lot of things that didn't come from the heart, because he knew that an NI was from a prominent family, so there was reason to use an NI. But an NI didn't believe a word he said. Jihao said she shouldn't be so naive. He didn't come here to protect you, but to kill Jiyu and avenge his brother. He hoped an NI would stop having those ridiculous misunderstandings. An NI, who was heartbroken, had to get up and leave. She dragged her injured body a few steps before collapsing on the ground. The commissioner told Jihao about the fainting incident. Jihao hurriedly ran out when he heard, but all he saw was an NI's departing back. He could not stop the tears in his eyes. An NI, who was sent to the hospital, was diagnosed with sepsis. Because of her gunshot wound, her immunity had decreased. Coupled with the great shock, she became unconscious, and sepsis is a terrible disease with a mortality rate of 40%. Now, the only way to find out is to survive the night. Jihao immediately felt deep remorse when he saw an NI like this, so he stood outside and stayed by an NI's side. This scene happened to be seen by an NI's mother. Jihao let out a sigh of relief only when an NI opened her eyes. In order to prevent an NI from seeing him, he deliberately hid. When the police took Jihao away, he looked at NNI one last time with reluctance. On the other side, Chun Jun, who had escaped, arrived at the village where Jihao was. He hadn't eaten for a few days and was warmly received by the village aunt. Chun Jun's ravenous appetite left the women dumbfounded. To escape the killer's pursuit, he snuck into Jihao's home. Ma Li, who had been worried about Chun Jun's safety, called. She then came to Jihao's home. Ma Li never imagined she would come to the home of the man she had been engaged to. Chun Jun, however, said he would definitely understand, because I had helped her so much before. I forced myself to be chaste now. Ma Li also learned from Chun Jun that it was NNI's second brother and sister-in-law who did it. He wanted to help Chun Jun but was rejected on the spot. He didn't want to cause Ma Li trouble. It turned out that he had already bought a ticket to fly to Europe tomorrow. Ma Li felt a little sad after hearing this. Chun Jun hoped that he could give her a ride tomorrow. Ma Li also agreed. Chun Jun expressed his gratitude for her care during this time. He thought Ma Li would try to keep him, but she got up and was about to leave. Chun Jun grabbed her hand and stopped her. Chun Jun gathered his courage and finally spoke his mind. He thought he was living his life seriously. Even though he didn't know where he was going, he was still running desperately, gasping for breath. But in the end, he found himself still at the bottom of the valley. A guy like me knows very well that I shouldn't do this to a woman as good as you, but I still want to give you this. Then Chun Jun put a ring on Ma Li's finger. It was the same ring that he had once given to an NI. It turned out that while running away, Chun Jun had accidentally seen the pawnshop and redeemed the ring. This ring was also selected by Ma Li for Chun Jun. Chun Jun knew that he was not worthy of Ma Li at the moment. He hoped to come to Ma Li in the best way in the future. If you are still alone at that time, please give me a chance. Ma Li was moved to tears by his words. As a woman, she also hoped to be loved. Now she has finally met a man who only has eyes for her. The next day, Ma Li took Chun Jun to the airport as promised, but she kept her head down and never said a word, before turning around and rushing off in the car, leaving Chun Jun standing there stupidly. What he didn't know was that Ma Li had already cried into tears looking at the ring on her finger. At that moment, her car had already been targeted by the killers. Chun Jun then received a phone call saying that Ma Li had been kidnapped, and told him to come alone within an hour. Facing this sudden accident, Chun Jun suddenly found himself at a loss for decision. After much deliberation, he resolutely chose to tear up his plane ticket and rush to the one he loved. After only one gunshot, Chun Jun took the gun and killed the person who came over. He calmly loaded the gun, not giving these villains the slightest regard. Then he opened fire, but was too exposed and unexpectedly shot. At the last moment, he still knocked the opponent down and quickly hid. Facing Ma Li's panic, Chun Jun comforted her that she was fine. At this time, one of the killers sneaked away. Chun Jun endured the pain, loaded his gun and fought his way out. He knocked out the assassin in front of him. As he looked around for the other assassin, he was shot in the vital area by the assassin hiding nearby. At the moment of his fall, Chun Jun managed to kill the other assassin. At this point, Ma Li ran towards Chun Jun, crying. Chun Jun, with tears in his eyes, realized that someone would cry even if he died. Although he was very sad, he was also very happy. Chun Jun was then taken to the ambulance. Ma Li saw him come round and spoke from the bottom of her heart. At that moment, Chun Jun took off the oxygen mask and asked Ma Li a question. What is it that you really like? Once, Chun Jun had asked the same question and Ma Li's answer was instant noodles. But this time, his answer was Chun Jun. Finally, at the moment of his death, he got a satisfactory answer. The man who had been lonely since childhood only got a glimpse of the tenderness of love at the end of his life. Just as Jihao and the others were being sent back to China, his mother told an NI that Jihao had left. An NI felt a little lost after hearing this, but immediately remembered what Jihao had once said. After recovering, an NI felt that it was a good thing that he could go back. At least he didn't go back on his words until the last moment. His mother asked an NI if she wanted to go see him. An NI shook her head to refuse, because she had already said goodbye to him many times before, and now there was nothing left to say. And letting him see me like this will only make it harder for him to take the step and leave. I don't want him to know about my illness at all. My mother could tell that the two of them really loved each other. It was only when an NI told the truth that he has always been by your side, even during the long period of your surgery. He never left the hospital. He even stayed awake and watched over you without taking a single drop of water. He didn't leave until the moment you opened your eyes. An NI's eyes had already reddened from crying after hearing this. Before leaving, my mother told an NI to hold onto the handrail, so that an NI could see Jihao one last time and say goodbye. Her mother drove as fast as she could to get there quickly. Just as Jihao crossed the border between the two countries, her mother arrived in time with an NI. An NI, who had hurriedly got out of the car, saw that Jihao was handcuffed, which made her puzzled. Then she ran towards Jihao, crying. Jihao also quickly ran towards an NI after breaking free. The moment they embraced was full of reluctance. The love that ran in both directions was simply beautiful. The squadron members were also extremely gratified to see this scene. Jihao was very worried about an NI's health. What if she fainted again halfway through the run? You have to know how to take care of your body. An NI, however, did not understand why she was handcuffed. Jihao told her not to worry, nothing would happen. But if something did happen, it would not be your fault. I don't regret it at all. You entered my life like a gift. I only feel grateful. Jihao also apologized to NI for the harsh words she had said last time. The two made their final confessions with tears in their eyes. In the end, Jihao was forcibly taken away. NI's heart was full of reluctance. When they reached the separation line, Jihao turned around and looked at NI one last time. When she saw the squadron members saying goodbye to her, NI's heart was close to breaking. On the other side, the director of the police station received a phone call and looked very solemn. Then the car that took them back to the country took them to a remote place. Just as they were full of doubts, the military minister in front got off the car. It turned out that the military minister wanted to execute them here, but Jihao said that even if they had to die, they had to be tried first. But the military minister did not give them this opportunity and immediately ordered to shoot. Hao Yu saw this and hurriedly blocked Jihao's way, but Jihao pulled him aside. Just then, after a few gunshots, the people present were instantly surrounded. It turned out that the director had arrived in time with his men. The chief emphasized that the execution should not be carried out without investigation and trial. That might wrong an innocent person. Now I have witnessed someone trying to kill my son. That's a different situation. The Minister of Military Affairs tried to struggle, but the chief shot him dead. Everyone present was shocked. When the mother saw her son return, she was so excited that she hugged Jihao. Since Chen Jun's death, Ma Li has not eaten nor drunk. One day, she suddenly walked out of her room and said that she wanted revenge. The mother was shocked to hear this. Ma Li then found Chen Jun's former manager, Chairman Min. From him, she learned about the organization that murdered Chen Jun. She was going to wipe them all out, leaving no survivors. Ma Li also wanted to give Xingli's second brother and sister-in-law a big gift. When they returned home, the second brother and sister-in-law were still teasing NI about being investigated by the National Intelligence Service. Their father, however, told them not to worry and that he had already arranged for a lawyer to help NI with the case. Just as they were wondering, Director Park was brought out. It turned out that Director Park had been ordered by the second brother and sister-in-law. He thought he had destroyed all the evidence, but Chairman Min had sent NI all the account details and phone records. Facing the accusations from Director Park, the couple tried to fight back, but were eventually arrested for abetting murder and kidnapping. If convicted, they will be sentenced to less than 10 years in prison. In the end, the winners in life were the eldest brother and sister-in-law. NI handed over the family business to her brother and focused on running her own listed company. At the same time, NI did not forget the people who had helped her. She asked Molly's mother to bring them limited edition cosmetics with their own portraits on the box. That night, just as NI was about to go to bed, she suddenly received a text message from Jihao. This surprised her. It turned out that when Jihao was being investigated by the National Security Agency, he had pre-ordered a year's worth of text messages. Since then, NI has often received various text messages from Jihao. This has also given NI a source of spiritual sustenance. Every day, she will remind him not to go out on an empty stomach. When driving, don't just look straight ahead, but also occasionally look to the sides. Whenever you miss each other, you can look up at the sky. That day, NI received a pot of flowers. Jihao asked her to take good care of them. When they bloom, she will know what kind of flowers they are. And the tomato seedlings NI gave Jihao have already bloomed. That night, NI received the last text message. Because the one-year subscription had ended, by then, the Edelweiss had already bloomed. The two agreed to meet in the country where Edelweiss bloom, but they didn't agree on a specific time. Each followed their own schedule and left it to fate. A year later, NI arrived in Switzerland and walked alone through the streets. She went to the lakeside where they had first met, but she did not see Jihao. Every time, NI returned disappointed. Although the language of flowers is precious memories, NI did not want to think of their relationship as memories. She firmly believed that they would meet again. She was willing to wait a lifetime for that day to come. That day, NI went paragliding in Switzerland, but when she landed, she was covered by the parachute. When NI came out, she suddenly heard a familiar voice. Seeing Jihao's sudden appearance, she couldn't believe her eyes. NI hurried over and gave Jihao a hug. She had finally waited for the person she wanted to see the most. At that moment, she no longer wanted to be apart from Jihao. The two lovers finally came together and even entered the marriage hall.